before I met Ricky, I was coming out of like a situationship that I knew that like it just wasn't it, and I think I like tried a lot to make it work, but I don't know, it wasn't working. And then I talked to my friend about it, and she was like, just end it, like don't even bother like trying anymore. And I was like, you're right, like what's the point? So I ended it, and it was good. I'm glad I ended it because then that allowed me to free up my mind. Um, but part of that too was that I was going to an all girls crew at the time, and they were talking about this book called Circle Maker, and I read the book. It was great. Um, and then I heard about someone who did the Circle Maker 40-day prayer challenge. And I was like, cool. So I'm gonna do that too because I don't know, maybe it's just me, but like I struggle a lot with just prayer, I think, and just like being consistent about it. So I read like the preface, I think, of the book, and it literally said like, oh, you have to do this with someone. Like you can't do it by yourself, type of thing. Like you should do it with someone, and you should like also journal while you're doing it. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really know who I can do it with like that. Who I know is gonna be like super consistent, who's gonna be like really able to like pray with me like that. So I figured, my mom is like the best option. So I told her about it, and I actually got the book for her in Spanish, the um, the Kindle version. So she had it on her phone, and we agreed to do it, and we did. And on day 6, maybe I want to say, don't quote me. It was talking about how oftentimes when we pray to God, we pray for things that we know that He's gonna do, like, oh God, I pray to get me home safe today, or to that I have a good day today, or like bless this food, like things that we know God is gonna do, but that we're like not as willing to pray for things that we know, like we truly have to put all our faith in Him. Like we don't know if He's gonna be able to do it. Um, Almost like in a sense of like challenging God, but not challenging God. Um, so I took that and I was like, yeah, I guess like all my life I've just been praying for like, oh, a good guy, like, you know, I want to, just have a family, just like very broad, like obviously it's gonna happen, but like I wasn't specific. So that day I wrote in my journal specifically what I was looking for in a man, um, and I just wrote a lot of things surrounding character qualities, and just like someone who seeks out God, someone who's going to challenge me to be closer to God too, not just like I have to pull out the weight. A huge part of it too was in regards to intimacy. Um, yes, a lot of us go to church and everything, but we all have different ideas and opinions of how we interpret the Bible when it comes to that. And a lot of people like to cut corners, and I didn't want that. I didn't want to be the one who had the conviction of, not getting intimate before getting married alone, because I had gone through that before and it was really difficult. So I needed the man, my future husband, to also have that conviction, so I'm not in this alone. So that one was a really huge part of it. And then the part where I prayed of like challenging God, if you will, was that I literally said in my journal, like, I don't want to continue running into any of these duds. Like, it's not just for my sake. Like, I'm not trying to be selfish, like, oh, I'm tired of going through this. No, it's also for my husband's sake, because every other person that I meet and I let into my life, that's another soul tie. And I don't want to keep bringing more soul ties alongside with me. So I was like, the next guy I meet, that's it. I'm done. Like, I want this to be it. I want to get married in 2022. And that is my prayer. And I ended it like that. Literally the next day I met Ricky. And funny enough, it was we had like met via Bumble at first in terms of like matching, and the only reason that I matched with him was because he had a picture that he was like sitting like next to somebody who already went to VU. And I was like, okay, if you're in this picture with this guy, that means you go to church. But specifically, you go to VU, and like you're probably a little bit more serious than like other people. So I literally like specifically asked him like, hey, you go to VU? And he's like, yeah, I'm actually going this Sunday. It was during the pandemic times when it was at Jungle Island, so we had church there like maybe once a month. And it was also baptism Sunday. I'm sure you remember that. And so we agreed to see each other that day and have brunch together, but like not sit together at church because that's weird. I don't know, this guy, like, I can't just sit with him. That's weird. So we, I saw him during baptisms, and you were getting baptized. So I was trying to record you, and I felt so bad because he was there in the middle, and then like I had my phone like on like pressing record already. Like you were literally about to get on the stage, and I was like, do I say hi? Do I not? Like I don't know what to do. So whatever, I said hi, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but like I'll come right back. I need to record my friend getting baptized. So I ran away. I don't know how he felt about that, but I came back, and then we went to the Sheik, whatever. We had brunch. It was great. We actually like we talked a lot, and like we didn't want the date to end, so we like kept it going. We went somewhere else, and on the way back home, I was like, I just had like this feeling that I was like, man, I think this is it. And a friend called me on the phone, and she like had asked me like what I was doing or whatever, what I was up to, and I was like, I think I just met my husband. And I went home, and I opened up my journal to read the prayer that I wrote, and like I just like started crying because it was like literally almost everything, minus the stuff that like you can't judge yet because you have to like experience it more. But it was almost everything. And I didn't tell him about that. I just, kept that to myself, told my mom. We kept praying about it because I did want to like make sure that things were still progressing as they should be. Like I had a revelation, of course, but like I still have to make sure to pray on it and stuff like that. And everything just like would fall into place. Like my dad is like difficult when it comes to men, and he didn't even want to meet the last person that I was potentially dating. So then with Ricky, like me and my mom prayed a lot, like just like so my dad could be receptive about it and stuff like that. And I had to like muster up a lot of courage to talk to my dad, to let him know like, hey, I want you to meet so and so. And when I did do that, he was like, okay. I was like, what? Like, that's it? Like, you're not gonna tell me like it's too fast, like no, it's a bad idea, like no. He was like, okay, let's meet him. And I was like, all right. So they met one day right before we were going to church again. That was like the following month that there was church again.
How long after you guys were?
Huh?
Like, how long were you guys dating at that point?
A month. I had already met his mom that Saturday, like literally the day before. So yeah, he came over literally like maybe like 30 minutes to an hour just before church, like to make it quick and like rip up the Band-Aid. He was sweating the whole time.
Who was your dad or Ricky?
And my parents noticed, obviously, pobrecito. But whatever. I think it went well. Sorry, I forgot to disclose that on week 2 of us dating, Ricky literally like confessed his love for me, and I was like not ready. Like I was like, this is intense. It's too much. Like I like gave him a silent treatment for like 2 days so that I can process and pray and everything. And then we like got together again that Monday, and I try to like, so like, hey, we're still getting to know each other. Like, let's take it one day at a time. Like, no need to like jump into like there's just like a fine line between like infatuation and so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't that because it wasn't the first time that someone was just like super interested and like super intentional and everything. Like I just really wanted to make sure it was real.
First of all, like, let me, I guess, retract a little bit because I think a piece of this is missing. So I moved to Miami in 2017, end of like December, like after Christmas. 2018 was like my first full year here. And I dated. I had a relationship that was not centered in Christ. That lasted like a year and a half ish, like dating for 4 and a year, like I would say like long distance. Long story short, it didn't work out, and I think the biggest thing was that Christ wasn't in her heart and Christ was in mine. But then I was willing to negotiate in a way of just like all for love, if that makes sense. And that's not, I'm actually very grateful that God ripped that relationship apart, because I wouldn't, like, I think the main thing is like I could be single for the rest of my life, but if I don't have God, like it's not the same. Like I need God. So long story short, like I also just continued dating and just not serious, and then basically I dated someone that was Christian, and then basically that was like my first relationship being like completely, how do I say this, like not diving into like sexual stuff at all. It was a very respectful relationship, and I really did appreciate that sense because I was like, it proved to me that sex wasn't the biggest thing in the relationship. It was more of like, how are we getting closer to Christ? Long story short, that ended, and like literally 4 months later, I meet Saidelis. So, but during that time, I was still, like I said, I was still dating, not doing any of that stuff, and kind of like my behaviors from before, just like being very loose with stuff. But before 4 months after that, like within that period, I was dating very just casually, just meeting people and not making anything serious. But there were still like girls just like, yeah, I'll entertain Jesus, I'll entertain Christian faith, but like, there was never like they didn't have a relationship with Christ. And so like the difference between Saidelis and these other girls were like, hey, like she has a relationship with Christ. She's a leader in the church. Like, she would go every Sunday and stuff like that. And so, I knew that 2021, like I was like, I'm gonna focus on VU because I was part of a small church before, and I was church hopping as well. VU was one of my churches I would church hop. And so yeah, I was intentional and I told Joshua Paul, like, hey, I'm gonna be intentional about going to VU frequently. And so that's the reason why I went to Jungle Island and started going frequently after that. So that was like the main thing. I saw her heart, met her family, and her family was just very warm and welcoming, and I was just like, this is a family I want to be part of. Her parents are like saints, like her dad's full of wisdom, and I love talking to him and stuff like that. And at first, like I was kind of nervous. I was like actually like sweating. I don't know if like Saidelis remembers that, but I was like literally sweating, like boob sweats. Like it was bad. Like yeah, like I don't know, like. And at the end of the day, like, yeah, like they were just so warm, and like it was funny. I will never forget this. Like her mom was like, "Oh, do you like to travel? Because guess what? She likes to travel." And I was like, "Yeah, I like to travel." Mind you, I've never been to Europe before, or even like South America, but I've been almost everywhere in the U.S. So again, I love to travel, but I never like ventured out there because of finances and stuff like that. So I prioritize maybe too much of the U.S. stuff, if that makes sense.
So everything went well. We started dating, and yeah, I mean, no real complaints there. Things were progressing as normal. Went to Mexico for his birthday, which was 3 months in. Stayed in separate bedrooms. I stayed with like one of his girlfriends, and he stayed with one of his guy friends. And then I had a trip planned already to go to Europe and live there for 2 months. And we had planned for Ricky to come for 10 days in between, like literally in the middle of month 1 and 2, to come to Lisbon, which is my favorite city in the whole wide world. I want to live there forever and ever. And he came, and unknown to me, he proposed there. So 6 months in, he proposed, literally like to the T. And yeah, I had no idea. Apparently, like he had visited my parents while I was in Croatia, and I knew of that visit, but like I was there too, like in like iPad form. But I just didn't think about it at all that he was gonna propose then. But he had been thinking about it like the whole time, like even on his birthday, month 3, like he already knew apparently.
Yeah. So, to my story of our engagement and stuff like that, like leading up to it, like coming in around my birthday, I already knew, like I was already picking out rings and stuff like that, and then I talked to her brother and sister-in-law first about it. They helped me pick out the ring that she wanted, and so I have a friend that's a jeweler in Houston, back in Houston, where I lived for 8 years, and he made the ring for me, and at basically like a family's a friend cost. So it's like basically it makes no profit on it. So it was clutch because your boy was in debt. So yeah, so I I like mentioning about the debt part. You know, at the end of the day, like I always made my bills and all this stuff. Like yeah, I had some like missed payments, but I think it was just more of like me being forgetful. But I was like your typical like paycheck to paycheck person, but like not that I needed to be, if that makes sense, because you know. But yeah, so I went to Lisbon to go propose to her because she was doing a 2-month remote year program where she was in Croatia and Portugal for a month and Portugal for another month. Portugal was just on her own, and you know she basically got to know the country a lot. The first week that she got to Portugal from Croatia, that's when I met up with her. And the next day, I basically proposed to her in a tour of Lisbon, and then basically did it in front of people, so she couldn't say no, because I know she wouldn't have said no, you know, if there was people in front. If it was private, then maybe she would have said no, and then I was like, there I am again, forcing things or saying I love you too quickly, getting like, you know, but she said yes, and I didn't ask her at first. I was just like, here, like, you know, I didn't say, will you marry me, until she says, like, asked a question, if that makes sense. So yeah, so we had our week to ourselves. I do want to stress out that, like, we stayed in different rooms, even though we rent one Airbnb. We were to the moment of our marriage, we stayed, you know, not doing the married stuff. So I always want to give that testimony, but yeah, like we respected each other, and then she went to her Selena stay, and I went to my own Airbnb for the rest of the rest of the trip. And then nothing. And then we got back here, and it was like wedding planning. So, and so yeah.
Yeah, I said yes, and it was great. It was fun. Again, we stayed in separate rooms. We were not sleeping in the same bedroom. But yeah, it was really great. Then just like we literally got married 6 months later, but in between that, I would say it was like maybe like the hardest part of our relationship, because we did SYNBIS, which is saving your marriage before it starts, at VU. And in there, I learned a lot about Ricky's finances. And like I knew that he had debt, but I didn't know how much debt. So it was a real big surprise to me, because we grew up so differently. Like I grew up, like we were doing really well up until the stock crashed in 2008. And he grew up just like his stepdad giving him like money whenever he needed it, even like with college, that was paid for. Whenever he got into like a big pickle with like credit card debt, his stepdad would bail him out. Like I didn't have that. Like I had to work, I had to save, like I had financial aid, thank God. Like my mom, her a saint, she saved every penny almost that my dad would give her when we were in a good time. And thank God she did, because if not, like I don't know where we would be. So my mentality growing up like that was like, I never want to be in this position. I never want to be in a place where we're living day to day. Like sometimes the electricity would be cut off because my dad didn't pay for it. Sometimes we didn't have cell phones. Like literally it happened one time where like my dad just stopped paying for the phone. So me and my brother, we went and we got our own phones and we paid for it with our own money. You know, like he never experienced that. So like this whole time I'm just like working really hard and like not having any debt. Like I had done financial peace already, like during the pandemic, and I saved so much money. I was like, woo, I'm gonna float in this money. Like what am I gonna do with all these things? And like it was really hard for me to like fixate in my brain that all of this money that I worked so hard to get so I can have like a good like emergency fund, all that stuff, like we would have to use this to pay off debt once we got married. And that was really hard. And then on his end, like he didn't want to like we just struggled with like the idea of like budgeting and stuff like that. Like I was a big budgeter and I didn't want to intrude so much with him. So I would just like try to remind him like, hey, did you budget this month? Stuff like, and he would just like, it was just a lot of tension. Until like one day, like he admitted that he needed help. And that's when things started changing. Like I was aware of literally everything that was coming in, everything that was coming out. We made a list of all of his debt. Like we really made it a plan for him to pay off as much debt as possible before we got married, because I didn't want him to feel that like he wasn't like capable of doing so. It's literally money management. You know what I mean? Like if you don't know where your money's going, like you're not gonna have it. It's gonna go somewhere else. So being able to realize like he spent way too much money on food, like way too much money on unnecessary like subscriptions, things like that, like that was extra money that he had a month now that he can pay off his debt. When he got his bonus from work, that too, like normally old Ricky would have just like used that to like do whatever he wants, buy something cool, buy something new. No, we used the full thing to pay off debt, you know. So
the 6 months, it was interesting. It was like one of those like time periods of just like, I felt like I didn't do much for the wedding planning. I honestly, honestly God, like I felt like I was just like coasting through it. And I would say like I want to put more emphasis on like the Simbas class that we did. I would say that was a very tough few weeks on my side. Just because we were just talking about things that maybe you experience like 2 years in the relationship. Like we never argued to that point, and then like we would get like sad arguing, like, and it's just like not. It was good because, like I said, it kind of like expedited like the whole dating process of just like figuring somebody out. Because you talk about everything. You talk about finances. You talk about sex. You talk about who cleans, the roles and responsibilities of the household, all that stuff. So I recommend everybody to take that class, because even if you're married now and you never took like a premarital class, like just take the class. And yeah, I think that was needed before we got married. If we didn't do that, like I feel like our first year would have been even harder, if that makes sense. So the wedding planning, that was all Saidelis, you know. And then yeah, we had our wedding. It was a small wedding. I think it was perfect. I think it was like, you know, I always envisioned like a big wedding with a, you know, a DJ party, all that stuff. But like I never had, because you never go to a wedding that like it's just a ceremony and a dinner and that's it. But that's actually like, for me, that's a perfect way to have a wedding, just because it's like, it makes it more intentional. It's like, and you're actually breaking bread with the family that you have and the people that are like in your table, that just like, you know, mean something to you, that are closer to you, especially if it's a small wedding. So yeah, so at the end of the day, like you know, we had our honeymoon. We actually had 2 honeymoons last year, so.
yeah, so part of the reason our wedding was small was because of like the finances. Like one, I just I didn't want to spend that much money on a wedding because we had a lot of debt to pay off, and we wanted to buy a house eventually. So we only had a wedding with like literally 30 people, just like my immediate family, his immediate family, my 4 bridesmaids, and their plus ones if it was a long-term relationship, you know, and his 4 groomsmen and their plus ones, and then I think like maybe like one other close family member from each side. But it was good. I mean, it was a beautiful day. I think it was just like the right amount of people, nothing too crazy or whatever. And we saved a lot of money. So, literally the day after we got married, what was it? February 20th. It was a Sunday. 21st was President's Day, so banks were closed. But the 22nd, we paid off his car. Like, done. I was like, we're not paying interest on this anymore. And yeah, we just kept like thinking about it like that. There was a lot of uncertainties with like student loans and stuff because they were paused, so we weren't sure if we should put money towards that or save for a house, but we ended up deciding to save for a house, and if things changed with the student loan, then we would pivot and put the money there, but it remained paused, still paused. So after our lease was up, we ended up buying this place.
Yeah, and then the first year of marriage was at our apartment. We got a house within the first year, which was, again, it was a blessing from God, and I attribute that more to I guess I don't know, like I want to attribute to something, but like at the end of the day, like God is so good that I feel like He would have given it to us anyways. But I feel like because of our obedience in our relationship and dating, and also like just I think me being in the position of submitting to her with my finances, if that makes sense, and just giving her the full control and cleaning up the mess, that we were able to get this home.
How was that for you?
It was a tough thing to say, especially like, you know, I know I'm going like back and forth, but you know, each topic I'll probably be doing this, but the finances piece was a financial piece of my life. I was a spender. Like I am the typical guy, like I can make a bunch of money, but also spend it in one night type of thing. Like I was the guy that at a party like would buy shots for the whole bar, you know, if that makes sense. And so, you know, I didn't have like a dime to save. You know, I was, like I said, I earned a lot of, like I had a high income. So it's like nothing that I could go to trips or I can go to music festivals that I wanted to, and just, you know. But I knew I needed to change, especially like when I saw how stable she was. And I think like the difference between me and her, and I had to get over this. So to your question about the finances part, my ego was kind of like, I have a woman that is like far superior to me. I put her like earthly possessions or her earthly status like above mine. And so it kind of caused this like me being inferior to her, and me kind of like, yeah, like I'm not bringing anything to the table other than like I'm fun and I can make you laugh. But at the same time, like as a man, you're meant to provide. Like I was raised with a father or stepfather that always provided for the household, and honestly, like I think it was like that's when the money habits didn't go right, because like anything I asked my parents, they would give it to me. And so that I think that was something that, again, I don't regret it because I got to this point, but at the same time, like I just, like for anybody that's listening, like there should be kind of restrictions on what you give your kids at all stages of their lives, because it's like, you know, it's kind of like an ATM. You know, all I need is the pin of, hey dad, I need $11,000, give it to me. And they were, you know, they were gracious parents. They paid for my rent. I was working 2 jobs and they paid my rent and even gave me some allowance. Like I made a lot of money always. Like I was, you know, but just didn't know how to keep it. So going back to like the financial side of, like, I guess even Symbis or whatever, like I had to come out real, and this is basically, I had credit card debt, I had a personal loan debt, I had a car loan, all this stuff. So basically my credit score was up what, 580, I think, at the time. And yeah, I would make my minimum payments, but either way. So luckily, I was able to pay off my credit card debt before we got married. I had a nice little bonus from my previous company, which I probably should have stuck it out for one more year just to get that bonus again. But I'm just kidding. But I paid for my credit cards and partial of my car loan, or I forgot, my personal loan, or one of those two. But I felt better going to the marriage knowing that I took off that credit card debt. Like, I even remember, like, we did a little story of me like, cut it, you know, like that song. But so yeah, so basically closed all my accounts. I closed I closed all my accounts and basically just joined up on hers. We have a joint bank account, joint credit card. We only have 2 credit cards now. Like, one's for like a specific reason because we get cash back, and one's for daily use, or we use it for everything, you know. But again, I knew that I had to submit to her because I knew that she was the strongest person in that. And I think that in a relationship, if someone's stronger in one area, then you need to submit to that area. If that makes sense. And so, long story short, I don't remember when it kind of took off. I took off that like kind of guilt of bringing stuff to her. But at the end of the day, like, I just knew that. Oh, I think it was conference when I was focused on. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, it was during conference where I heard from God that like He was going to provide, and I think that at the end of the day, like, I think I was too focused on like trying to get to her level, trying to get to like another promotion or another better job or like whatever like that, and I think that kind of like sealed the deal a little bit more. If like, of just, hey, like, you know, I'm always going to provide no matter what. And so you don't have to worry about your finances anymore. And I know that, I don't know, yeah. But like nowadays, yeah, we still have our joint account and all that stuff. So nothing's kind of separate. We don't believe in that. I was okay because I know like a lot of relationships, like they have like their main account and then they have their own separate accounts. But it's like at the end of the day, like we budget correctly to have our own allocations for things. But what else can I say? So yeah. So now we're here. Now we have this house.